Hi guys and welcome. This is Cooking with Kimberly. For those of you who are new here, hello and welcome. For those of you who are returning, thanks so much for watching. Today I am getting up to some adventures in the kitchen and I am making my own stuffing. Thanksgiving just recently happened in the US. It was in Canada last month, and Christmas is just around the corner. So with all the holidays and all the little extra things, I thought that it would be a good idea to learn how to make my own stuffing. I went searching for a recipe and I found one. I'll leave the link in the description below that I'm following. It's super simple, super easy, and it tastes absolutely delicious. And it only requires a few ingredients, so I really enjoy that fact, is it's not too much to be using. You're just using simple ingredients to make a delicious homemade stuffing. Your first step, obviously your first thing you're going to need is bread cubes. Now I am going to go through all of the exact measurements as I go through the process here, but bear with me, I'm just going to go through the ingredients at this point. So first up you need your bread cubes. Obviously now I've made this as homemade bread. If you choose to buy something from the store, that's different. You would want to make sure though that you have the proper amount. So we've got bread cubes and you have onions, butter, and some spices. So we've got rosemary, sage, and thyme here. As well, we've got pepper and salt and parsley for our spices. Now you can, for those of you who don't want to necessarily use butter, find a healthier alternative by using perhaps coconut oil or olive oil, something like that. However, because it's stuffing, realize that that's going to change the flavor dramatically because coconut oil, especially when you're using it in an actual recipe, does not serve as a replacement for butter. So for this particular recipe, I'm not straying from trying to use a healthier alternative. I have not yet found a better alternative other than butter that's going to work with this recipe because it changes the flavor so much. So those are your ingredients. That's pretty much it. The only other thing I have here is chicken broth. So if you are someone who gets up to more adventures in the kitchen, you can definitely make your own homemade chicken broth. That's something I've not yet attempted. I'm sure I will eventually get there. But for right now, I just have store-bought broth that I can use. You can also, if you don't want to use chicken broth, you can use water and perhaps some chicken flavoring that you've got. In terms of utensils, you're just going to need a few. So I obviously have the bowl in which I'm making my stuffing. Then I've got, for those of you who like measurements, your tablespoon and I have a 1/3 cup. You're going to need 2/3, but I have a tablespoon and a 1/3 cup and a frying pan. That's pretty much it, other than a pot that you will need, especially if you're baking this inside the oven, which presumably you are. So you'll need some sort of pot that is oven safe that you can put into the oven. So I'm just going to go ahead and wash my hands and we'll get started. So your first step, for those of you who are observant, you'll notice that I've put my frying pan on the stove already. Now that's 2/3, so I use my 1/3 cup here. It's 2/3 of a cup of butter that goes into that frying pan. And then you have 2 small onions, which I've chopped up and put in this neat little bowl here. You're going to combine that together and your rosemary leaves you're going to put in as well. You'll want about 2 tablespoons if you are sticking with the appropriate recipe. So about 2 tablespoons of rosemary leaves. You're going to let that saute itself or fry itself for about 10 to 12 minutes. For us, that's a little bit longer because of the fact that it's wood burning. If you have an electric stove, you just want to make sure it's sitting for about 10 to 12 minutes, stirring it occasionally. And that's it for your first step. So I've allowed my onion mixture to saute and it is done. What I'm now going to do is scrape it all out onto my bread cubes, which at this point don't have anything else on them. Now for these precise measurements, or for this particular recipe, I'm using 12 cups of bread cubes. So just to give you an idea, and like I said, I'll link that in the description down below. Once you have your onions done, your onion mixture added, you're going to add your spices. So this is up to you as to how much you use. For us, we just like to have a little bit of flavoring in there. So I'm going to use about a tablespoon of parsley. This particular recipe, you can use however much or however little you want. Spices are great in that it allows you to add or not add as much as you would like. So I got a tablespoon of parsley. I'm going to add about half a tablespoon of sage as well as thyme leaves. Add salt and pepper to taste, and then I'm going to add the chicken broth. So once you have all of your spices added, you're then going to go ahead and add the chicken broth. The reason why you want to do this, or in a certain case, water. The reason why you want to add it at the end is because if you add it before you add all the spices, it's sitting on the bread and it's not thoroughly soaking in all of the extra stuff that comes from the spices. So for this particular recipe, it calls for 3/4. I find that's a little bit too much. So I use about 2/3, and that usually turns out to be just fine, because you have to remember, if you're putting it into the oven, you're letting it bake, especially if it's inside of a chicken, you're going to get all those extra juices as well. Once you have all of that mixed into your bowl or in your bowl, you're going to just mix it all together. Once it's all mixed together, you can do whatever you'd like with it. You can put it in a pot, which you'll see I have here for the additional. For those of you who are more observant, you'll notice I have a chicken sitting back there. So I'm going to put most of it inside the chicken and then the rest of it in the pot and allow it to bake in our oven. Now, if you're baking it in an electric oven or a gas oven, you're going to want to set your temperature to 350 degrees and let it go for about 35 to 45 minutes, just depending on how soft you like your stuffing. And that's it. It's pretty simple. You're talking about bread and some spices and some chicken broth or some water if you choose to use water instead. It's not too complicated. It's a very easy stuffing recipe, but it's absolutely delicious. So if you're looking for a homemade stuffing recipe for the holidays, or just to make just as a side dish for something, then this is a great one to try. I'll leave the link, like I said, in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.